Hello and welcome to Big Talk live from Nigeria's seat of power, Abuja. My name is Edika Mike and thanks so much for tuning in and joining us on the program. Tonight, we'll turn our attention to regional politics, the stability of the region, most especially the economic West African nation bloc, where we've also seen the exit of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger Republic. And of course, the Minister of the Foreign Affairs in Nigeria, Ambassador Yusuf, has described it as a complex. The reason for the exit of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger from the Economic Community of West African States. The situation is demanding some careful consideration and looking at the diplomatic effort that was deployed to address the underlying concerns. There are many persons that are stressing that the withdrawal will have far-reaching consequences for regional security, economy, and integration effort. We've also looked at the fact that President Bola Tinubu had over time said he has been working tirelessly to address the concerns of these countries through the diplomatic channels. The security implications are there staring us over these exits. It has a very significant concern on our region, which is already grappling with terrorism and humanitarian crisis, which has continued to be a matter of concern. And this news that I've just gotten in over the exit officially, ECOWAS said they have received that attention, and of course, they're making a whole lot of efforts to see how they can resolve that situation. Tonight on the program, we'll be extracting that concern, the implications, how significant is the exit of these countries from ECOWAS. What is the impact here in Nigeria, looking at our borders, looking at the insecurity challenges Nigeria is being confronted today. What does this really mean for us? Also, expansion towards the other countries here in ECOWAS. We'll also turn attention tonight on the issues of the national budget, defense at the National Assembly. House of Reps are questioning institutions and heads of parastatals for not physically being present over the procession and the session to defend some of the allocations, proposed allocation for the 2025 budget presented by the president. That will top chart on our discussion tonight on the program. But to look at these regional issues, stability and the politics ongoing, I'm being joined by Professor Mukhtar Iman. He's a professor of international relations. He's my guest tonight on the program. Thanks so much, Prof, for finding time to be with us. A lot of concern. First, let's look at the coming back of Donald Trump. I understand it has been a major shake back to Europe and Africa. Many countries are looking at how to respond. He has actually given an order. They should stop some foreign aid. They should stop, some support and all of that. So it looks that Africa is actually shaken by this. What should be your concern, to African countries in respect to Donald Trump's return? First.
Well, thank you very much. So Trump's coming or return to the Oval Office is very significant, right? It's a watershed event for the American political space. For the first time, or almost the first time, I'm sure this is one of the first very few cases of a president who left office and returned back to office after another administration from a different political party came on board. So it's a watershed event for the American political space. But as far as the relations with its impact on Africa is concerned, the reality is, yes, Donald Trump in his coming has signed these executive orders. And like you rightly mentioned, one of them is cutting down on aid to African countries. And not just African countries, but countries around the world where the United States basically has that outreach. And the man is trying to put America first. The man has proven himself to be an ultra-nationalist who basically is concerned about his country, and he's trying to diminish the cauldron around multilateralism being the in thing of the current international order. For me, and rightly so. I think what we need to do as Africans and as Nigerians is to sift through and find the opportunities that lies therein. this is a golden opportunity for you. The man is saying America first. The man is saying every country return back to your cocoon. Be independent and be sovereign. We will not have any business with your internal affairs. For the first time, somebody is letting you go off the hook. The man is withdrawing his country from international regimes such as the World Health Organization, such as NAFTA, just as he did in his first coming. Even though at the time he called us shithole countries. All we needed to do was to have taken that to our advantage and ensure that we look inward and begin to develop homegrown solutions. If multilateralism isn't working, and rightly so, for example, what have we gained from Commonwealth? What is the positives that has come to Nigeria from OPEC? What are we doing in these places? All right, if we must be there for strategic reasons, which is understandable in diplomatic parlors, because when you hear strategic reasons, you really cannot pinpoint. But that's the term, strategic reasons. But all right, let's be there for strategic reasons, but we need to return back home. Look, the rise and fall of every global power has always been predicated upon its economic prowess. The reason why was China not battered by colonialism? Yes, they were. But the reason why China has a place around the table of the Security Council of the United Nations, which is the highest decision-making body in the world today, is because of its economic prowess, not because of foreign aid coming to it. So at this time, we need to begin to harness our resources. We need to look inward. The idea of Pan-Africanism and resource nationalism, this is the time for it. Our leaders need to wake up.
We shouldn't be panicked.
Why should we panic? For crying out
African
loud?
leaders shouldn't be panicked.
Listen, this is the country that houses 30% of the world's total mineral resources. What are you panicking for? This country is the 6th highest producer of oil and the 3rd highest producer of gas in the world, or reserve in the world. What other economic powers do you want? All you need is ensure that you harness the resources, ensure that 1 out of every 4 African is a Nigerian. What other power are you looking for? You have the population, you have the resources. Harness them.
All right, Prof. It's a very developing conversation, and of course, we'll continue to track that. But what is really recent has been the exit of some of these ECOWAS countries. When you look at the fact that we are grappling with terrorism, insecurity, how do you receive first these news over the official recognition of their exit? What is the impact? How would Nigeria and other West African countries survive these exit of these members?
Well, as far as survival, I think that's an extreme. Survival is we will always survive, right? In as much as it's becoming existential, but we will exist, we will survive. Human creation is so dynamic and robust that it is resilient to whatever
Do we need them more than us?
That's a very subjective question. And again, it will receive a subjective answer. But the variables are there, the indices are there, which you need to weigh to see whether they will need us more than we will need them. For example, in the last couple of years, 70% of the budget of Mali, for example, has been dependent on aid coming from ECOWAS, for example, the AU, and so on and so forth. But again, when you look at it on the flip side, what are the current crop of leaders in Mali doing to ensure that they're able to harness the resources within their territory for the betterment of their people? If they begin to turn around the resources, for example, because today, as we speak, the policy of Francafrique, which is France domination, neocolonialism, put simply, France continued domination over its erstwhile colonies, is beginning to shrink. Now, the hold that the West, France in particular, used to have on its erstwhile colonies is no longer there. Niger, for example, was subsidizing electricity for France because of its rich deposit of uranium. So will they be able to harness these resources for the betterment of their people? That might turn around the Human Development Index within these countries. That might ensure that infrastructural development comes into the country. That may also ensure that the sovereign wealth fund of the country will go higher, thereby driving in or attracting in foreign direct investment. These are some of the things that are required. But let's take a step back a little. The shock that came to me about the exit of these countries was the fact that it happened at the time where we most critically need the unity, and we needed a unifier. And this is happening under the chairpersonship of yours sincerely, Nigeria, which shouldn't be the case. It has diplomatic implication, it has political implication, it has security implication, and it has economic implication. And of course, it also has social implication as well. So when you look at all of these areas, you will come to see that their exit is actually not a win for any one of us, because we are better together in that unity, in that, in that enclave, than divided. Because divided was just a single piece of the bigger picture, which is ECOWAS. And the reality is that besides the diplomatic angle, which again I feel Nigeria did not explore sufficiently, because I still feel that more could have been done.
Because the president is saying he had worked tirelessly to use all diplomatic channels to resolve all of these issues.
He used all. With all due respect to my dear president, I don't think he used all. I think he exhausted what was within his reach. But I still feel that more could have been done. Look, there is no war that has ever ended on the battlefield. Have you ever heard of any? Every war has ended around the table. So when you say you have exhausted all diplomatic channels, and that's what soft power is about, that's what diplomacy is about. No war in the history of wars has ever ended on the battlefield. So I don't understand. This is a war. Because they didn't carry guns, it's a war. This is diplomacy of confrontation. So more of that channel needed to have been explored. And in diplomacy, when they go high, you go low. These are young blood. These are people who, and besides, their countrymen are applauding them. Did you not see what happened on the streets of Niamey?
They're very happy about the regime.
People are, look, the reality is this. There's a democratic reversal going on around the world. That's a separate conversation we'll have someday. But people are tired of the idea of democracy because its ideals are not there. The essence of democracy is to ensure good governance, isn't it? It's to ensure that people feel the impact and dividends of governance. It's to ensure that it brings betterment to the life of the people. It is not happening, and that's the reason why people are protesting. In 2015, did you not see what happened in the capital in the United States? A country that prides itself to be the most advanced democracy all over the world. Even though there is no such thing as the most advanced democracy, democracy is not a destination, it's a journey. Yet, people poured out on the streets to protest. At a time when Nigeria was celebrating one of the first election in the world, they were contesting the outcome of an election. Why? Because there's a democratic reversal. You see, the ordinary man does not care what name you give to leadership. All he cares about is bread and milk on his table. So, I think back to the issue, the diplomatic channels should have been explored much more than they were explored now, considering the backlash, considering the consequences. Because when you look at, this is the second largest corridor in the world, besides the old Silk Road, where the Chinese are currently building the Belt and Road Initiative, from a network of economic activities from Beijing to the United Kingdom. And that is part of what you are enjoying today in your rail revolution in this country. These are the kind of things we should see across that corridor. Now, lastly, to the security implication. Did you know that, well, this is from the study we conducted a couple of years ago, there are 500 million light and small weapons in Libya alone. Muammar Gaddafi had a cache of weapons in his arsenal. Today, as you and I are speaking, there are 5 RPG rifles to one family in Libya.
How did he annex all of that?
He did because he had friends in the military-industrial complex, and perhaps he was arming himself, getting ready for whatever God knows. And as soon as that regime fell, and thanks to, again, yours sincerely, because you refused to vote, the cowardice of the Nigerian leadership at that time gave in, and Libya fell on its face for no reason, because Barack Obama wanted it to fall. And here we are. It is the disruption that has happened in Libya now that has led an AK-47 that is supposed to sell for ₦1 billion is selling in Sambisa forest for 40,000 naira. Weapons began to flow from Libya through sub-Saharan Africa into West Africa, into Sambisa. Free flow. And look at the level of insecurity we're faced with today. Across that corridor is one of the most dangerous today. And so you find that there is the internationalization of terrorism that has taken grip of the entire corridor. That was one of those, I've just told you, that still is the second largest corridor in the world. Imagine what economic benefits can come out of that corridor. From Nigeria to Timbuktu, we used to have people travel through the Sahel. with camels and so on and so forth. Today, you cannot even go to Maiduguri. It's unfortunate. It is sad. And here we are, where we're supposed to have unity, where we're supposed to have multinational joint task forces addressing the international dimension of security through, through the instrumentality of groups, anemic groups such as Al-Qaeda and IS and Al-Shabaab and the Tuareg across that corridor. We are falling out. I wrote a paper a couple of years ago, I think it was 2 years ago. It was titled The Crisis of Insecurity in the Sahel and the Challenges of Ungoverned Spaces. My theory, the reason why the crisis has persisted across that corridor is because of the presence of ungoverned spaces. And here we are, governance is shrinking even much more within that corridor. And we think we are safe.
So you're worried that if this is a system of governance and democracy that is practiced within that region, we'll continue to have more countries pulling out? Because this is what the juntas are accused. They have accused ECOWAS of failing to support them in their fight against terrorism and of imposing sanctions that they claim harm their population.
Well, that's a political statement.
Can Nigeria even fight resolve their own problems?
Well, the crisis, you see, that's the thing about terrorism. The internationalization of terrorism makes it a transnational border. It is not just a sovereign national government problem anymore. And that's the reason even the United States has to form a joint task force with other countries like Mexico and Canada, etc., let alone ourselves here that are managing with the less sophisticated weaponry and equipment we have to tackle the crisis and the unfolding nature of insecurity, because it is taking different dimensions and different shapes by the day. The guys in the bush are even becoming much more sophisticated than our national armies. And that is the reason why we need to have this collaboration. That's why there is the need for that joint effort. And we are pulling, and these countries are seen pulling out of ECOWAS. It's worrisome. But for countries like that to sit and claim that Nigeria or ECOWAS hasn't given support, well, again, that's a subjective statement. Since we're within the realm of speculation, one would want to speculate that maybe they're only trying to continue to have that legitimacy, because as we speak, the fact that they came in through the barrel of the gun delegitimizes them. And so naturally what you do is try to evoke sympathy from your people. And that's exactly what they're trying to do, perhaps to survive.
Do you feel that allegation by the Niger leader towards Nigeria that we are trying to host France in Nigeria held water?
It's an allegation. The onus is on us.
Because government said there is nothing of such. France embassy said there's nothing of such.
Well, the information, the thing about allegation is that it is you against their word. The onus of proof or disprove is on you.
Because they are called them, give evidence, show us evidence.
Right.
If back up your statement.
So it's an allegation. If the government says, no, we haven't done any such thing, the foreign ministry, I'm sure, within its ambit, within its reach, the resources to be able to counter these claims, but we need to do more in terms of public diplomacy. We're not doing that much. I expected the foreign ministry to have addressed this thing headlong, to have made press statements. The government should have leveraged on this. Do not take me out of context. I'm not saying crisis is good, but in every crisis situation, there's an opportunity. So the government needed to have found the opportunity within this crisis situation to be able to tell its story, to be able to present its case and say, look, the relationship between Nigeria and France is a transactional one. It's not a slave master kind of relationship. If that is what you have, which is apparently what they have, because we all know what the policy of Francafrique, which I talked about earlier, has done to the economies of this country. We all read and heard and were told about things that the French policy of assimilation did to the Francophone countries. At the time in 1945, where our nationalists were clamoring for the Welfarist Act that brought us Makerere in Uganda, that brought us the Yaba College in Lagos, the Francophone countries did not have a single school. At a time where Ansom Kuti and the others, Antonio Nahoro, were in Congress, in the House of Regional Houses of Assembly, there was no such thing happening in the Francophone countries. So we knew clearly well how they muzzled, how the policy of assimilation has worked, how France has continued to shackle, to strangle its erstwhile colonies. We see these things happening, but the truth of the matter is, amidst all of that, we must understand who stands Our relationship, like I said, with France is transactional. It is diplomatic in nature. Tell me one francophone country that has the presence of POJO. No, none. But we have them here. So
if people said, I mean, if countries are running from France, why is Nigeria also trying to have some level of relations? Is it a layman thought?
It will not be fair for you to say Nigeria cannot choose her friends now. I mean, this is international politics. And in international politics, just as it is with domestic politics, there are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies. It is about permanent interest. If what we are looking for in France aligns with our national interest, then of course, we can relate with France. But on what basis are we relating with them? You see, there's this thing around diplomatic bargain. No country lives in isolation. You cannot live alone. You must align with the country, one or the other. But at the end of the day, what is most essential is on what basis are you negotiating with that country? Are you negotiating with the country as a king meeting a king? Because you see, the thing about diplomatic bargain is you are bargaining from one of three positions. You are either bargaining from a position of strength, a position of weakness, or in no position at all, depending on the chip with which you're coming to the table to bargain. So what is Nigeria bargaining with France with? What are the chips that we have with which we are having this conversation with France? Or are we just going to France with cap in hand begging? If that is the question, if that is the issue, then of course we need to begin to rethink our foreign policy towards France. But I don't think that is the issue, because like I said, when you look around you, you find that France, a lot of French companies are domiciled in Nigeria. The relationship is basically on the level of transaction. When the president visited, it was obvious. He talked about some of the bilateral agreements that he was going to sign with the French. But because of the antecedents of France, everybody is wary, because they have seen what the French have done in their former colonies. They have seen how they have, and the role that they played, by the way, in the Biafran, in the civil war in Nigeria. So these are some of the things that are raising the apprehensions and the skepticisms that you are talking about. And people are in their right senses to talk about that, because I have interrogated the Chinese about this. When people were shouting, oh, China is here to, I asked the Chinese foreign minister a very critical question. Are you coming to Africa as a friend, a partner, or a conqueror? Because you are a superpower. And the reason I'm asking is very simple. We still have the spirit of colonialism hovering around our head. Yes, we're seeing this still playing out today. And so these are some of the things, the reasons for the apprehension that we're seeing playing out today.
Probably there's a need to come together and build a sustainable economy from the AU to ECOWAS, because the global challenges we are having, the challenge we are having today, people are saying is a global challenge. That issue of economy is not just peculiar to Nigeria or just peculiar to West African countries. So can we find a way forward to address and help ourselves and help Nigeria? And can Nigeria help Nigeria? Can Africa help Africa at a time like this?
Yes, this is the time, particularly with your opening statement about Trump and other leaders of that nature. This is the time for the South-South cooperation to become even more deepened. This is the time for Africa to begin to look out for Africa. Look, Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Nyerere, in their text Towards Colonial Freedom, talked about the 4 aspects of liberation. And they said the first aspect of liberation is to liberate yourself from colonialism. The second is to liberate yourself from neo-colonialism. The third, they said, is to liberate yourself from Africans. Africa must liberate herself from Africans, because there were those we call the feudal overlords, right? People like that, people who will take from here and find nowhere else to go and hide the money, but to take it to the United Kingdom. Those sort of people. So they are saying, liberate yourself from these people. And the 4th aspect of liberation they talked about was the mental liberation. To achieve all of these steps of liberation, we must look inward. Nobody is coming to solve the problem of Africa for Africans. Nobody
to the World Trade Organization and all those organizations, IMF.
These guys are looking out for themselves. Do you know who colonized you? Who was your colonizer? Britain? No, the United States. After the Second World War, Britain lost. The reason why you gained independence, do not allow this text. Well, I'm part of the people who preach these things in the books. But then, there are unconventional thoughts around this. The reason why you gained independence, listen, when the Second World War was about to end, the United States came at a later time. It was a late entrant into the war. And it dealt the final blow, and Hitler crashed, right? And then he took the credit for it. The IMF and the World Bank which you speak about today was tagged the infrastructural the International Bank for Infrastructural Development, the IBRD. It was set up to help build economies that were devastated by the war with the United States dollar. And the arrangement was that the colonies that were under Britain would be handed over. But look, by omission or commission, that was the case. Because the monies that the IBRD, which aka the World Bank, used to reconstruct the economy, Churchill was broke. The economy of the UK crumbled to the ground. It was the US money that built the UK. And UK owns you. Who do you think then owns you? The US owns you. They owned you at some point if they still do not own you till today. Because when you look at it from structural adjustment program to the current devaluation policies that the current administration is trying to impose and shove down our throats, line, hook, and sinker, where is it coming from? All of these things were set up and established by the Blake and Blair Extra Parliamentary Committee in the United Kingdom through the support of the United States. Austerity measures, where did they come from? From the IMF. Where do you think the money that built the IMF came from? From the United States. That is Wall Street money. That is JP Morgan money. And this is exactly how they have been able to put you down. So eventually, this is what is playing out. And for us to be able to break from that bond, that shackle of slavery, we must look inward. We must do what the likes of Lee Kuan Yew did in Singapore. We must do what the likes of the Al Maktoums did in the UAE. Dubai was a desert in 1980. Look what they are today. They have become the Manhattan of the Middle East. Dubai did not had one tall building in 1980. Oman had a 100-kilometer stretch of road in 1980. Today, the world is running to Dubai and Oman. Where are we in all of this equation? So this is the time for our leaders to take back what is rightfully theirs. This is a time for Nigeria to ensure that it galvanizes country across the breadth of ECOWAS. Like I said, this is an opportunity for this administration. If these guys, you thought you will not be able to get the support of the erstwhile of the Francophone countries, now they are chasing France away and they are throwing their support somewhere else. Why shouldn't Nigeria take advantage of that in ECOWAS? So Nigeria needs to re-strategize its policy towards ECOWAS. What do we want in ECOWAS? What are we doing in ECOWAS? Are we really the champion of Africa? Are we really championing ECOWAS? Or are we just some second-class backseat takers in ECOWAS? We need to begin to redefine that. And the foreign ministry has to take the lead.
So Africa's centerpiece of Nigeria's foreign policy.
Exactly.
A lot of concern right there, Prof. But in a way, it takes leadership to get all of these things to work.
Absolutely.
Because if you can see the man at the United States is actually taking the lead and showing the example and championing that cause. So it means that the leaders of Africa should do that and not really pushing the blame to the citizens to also have a contribution. It must start from the head.
Yes, the leadership.
Professor Imam is Professor of International Relations and, of course, one who understands the business of regional politics and international politics as well. Thanks so much for joining us, Mukhtar Imam. Thanks so much for joining us on the show tonight and giving us this highlight. We do hope that all of this can get to the point where Africa and ECOWAS can be greater again. Thanks so much, Prof, for joining us tonight. Everyone, we'll now be turning attention to the issues of National Assembly. The Budget, Defense, House of Reps are accusing heads of MDS for not presenting themselves physically to defend what they have for 2025 budget. It has sparked a lot of conversation, and tonight we'll be looking at that very closely on the show. Do stay with us. I'll be right back. Policies and political actors are in the news every day, all day. And on our part, we guide you through the noise and get you to the heart of the matter. Big Talk is your home of all-angle analysis of the top political stories. Airing weekdays on Global TV, 7 p.m. Big Talk, engaging and insightful.